How good are the Colts in your estimation, Greg?
It's funny you say that. We just wrapped up a production meeting, and we were, talking about tonight's game in San Francisco. And, are they the team in the NFC that as a wild card, if you draw them as a division winner and San Francisco comes into your building for the first round of wild card weekend, you're almost like, God, we played all season to win the division. We draw these guys.
Right.
I think Indianapolis is kind of that team in the AFC. I think if they go, whether, they got a shot to still win it, so they could still potentially hold tonight's game. Will have a lot to do with that. But in the event that they don't, and they have to go on the road, their game is built on the road. They force takeaways on defense. Darius Leonard is incredible. That defense, that front with Buckner, and they got guys in the back end. Kenny Moore just made his first Pro Bowl. I mean, they are a legit defense that's really fast and really good at getting the ball back. And then, of course, offensively, we talk about in the playoffs, your ability to be really good up front with the offensive line, one of the best in the league. And then a potential MVP candidate. I know people kind of balk at that because he's not a quarterback, but Jonathan Taylor is as good a football player as there is in the NFL. And, I think that recipe travels well. I think that recipe holds up in all conditions, whether, you get a tough weather day or, whatever the circumstances that we see in the playoffs each year. I came away. I went into the game, really. I saw Indy play against Tampa Bay, a few weeks back. They ended up losing, but I walked out of there saying, these guys are pretty good. And then the other night, what they were able to do against what's been a very good and a very hot New England team was really impressive.
Yeah, big time. And Jonathan Taylor should be talked about in MVP terms. I understand Rodgers is playing out of his mind, and the Packers seem to be making plays now around him in a manner that is definitely championship quality. But I think Taylor's an MVP candidate. What do you think?
Oh, I think there's no question. I think right now, if you had to pick the top three candidates, in any particular order, obviously Rodgers and Brady, and then it's Jonathan Taylor's that third guy. I think the MVP, most likely barring some unforeseen outcome at the end of the season in the playoffs, it's going to be one of those three guys. And I think that a lot of people again are hesitant. They say, well, how could Derrick Henry, last year, who had the year he had, if a running back ever is going to win it, how is it not Derrick Henry? And I think it's not a knock on Derrick Henry. I think it's always just in comparison to what your peers are doing around you. Not all seasons are created equal. And not every top quarterback performer of that year is equal to maybe in the past year. There's so much nuance to these MVP cases. When do you get hot? When do your big moments come? I mean, for Jonathan Taylor to have that big moment at the end of the game, New England's got 9 guys in the box. They're saying, if we can get this stop, we're going to get the ball back down 3 and maybe go tie the game up with a field goal. And next thing you know, he goes, 768 yards or whatever it was for an all-time, pretty much a walk-off moment. I mean, those MVP moments shape MVP candidacies. And he had his moment. If he can have another 2 or 3 and maybe have some in the playoffs, I think he's going to be right in the mix. Can he beat out one of the quarterbacks? I don't know. But he definitely deserves to be in the conversation, no doubt.
Greg Olsen here on the Rich Eisen Show. And you know the way this works too, Greg. Knee-jerk reactions week to week, and sometimes now thanks to Twitter in the middle of a game. Going into the fourth quarter, I think the narrative of the Patriots needing only 3 throws out of Mac Jones, despite the weather, but they still only had him throw 3 times in that weather. Prior to the bye, and then coming out of the bye, looking the way they did, there'd have been all these questions. Can Mac Jones really carry the day here? Like, if he's got to win a game, can they really trust him? And then the fourth quarter happened. So what do you take out of that game about the Patriots and their rookie quarterback moving forward here, Greg?
Yeah, we actually talked about it pretty early, in the broadcast, where we referred back to that Buffalo game prior to the bye for New England. And and the point we tried to make clear was, I don't think that scheme or that philosophy on that crazy Monday night and that brutal weather, I don't think it was at all an indictment or an indication of how they feel about Mac Jones. I think Bill Belichick placed the bet that his defense was going to be able to hold up in those conditions and that Buffalo wasn't going to be able to really take control offensively to force New England's hand to do anything different on defense and on offense, And as a result, he won. He won the bet. So I think it was more of his confidence in his defense than it was his lack thereof in Mac Jones. And then through the first 3 quarters, there was no question. He struggled. I thought Eberflus, the D coordinator of Indy, did a great job. He was mixing up his looks. He was changing it up. And Mac Jones made a couple uncharacteristic, bad throws and a couple turnovers. The one late in the second quarter before the half was a big one that prevented points. But then, as you said, all of a sudden the game flipped. And in the fourth quarter, when he had no choice but to drop back and throw the ball and play from behind, he really played well. And they came up one possession short. They came up, one big Jonathan Taylor run from getting the ball back down 3 with a minute 20 or so left in the game if they can get a stop. So I think that fourth quarter is what they need to focus on. That fourth quarter has got to be what they built his confidence off of, because if they're going to make a run into the playoffs and they're going to go and contend with the Kansas Cities of the world and whatnot, they're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to be dynamic in the passing game, and they're going to have to make plays when it's needed.
And that's kind of what Frank Reich had to say this week, saying that Carson Wentz at some point is going to have to be, if you will, the star of the game. That he's going to have to win one at some point down the line here, if they make the playoffs. I thought that was an interesting comment from the coach on that one.
Absolutely. And so many, the word balance gets thrown around, and people want to say balance is, you got to throw it 50%, you got to run it 50%. And really what balance means, and what Frank Reich is saying, he's like, we are a run-dominant team. But balance to us means when we have to throw it, if we find ourselves trailing or we find ourselves in we must-pass situations, we need to be able to win those matchups. We need to be able to win those situations. To them, that's balance. Are they going to throw for 350 a game? That's probably not their recipe. But can they maintain the ability of their run game to stay productive? But then all of a sudden, if they find themselves trailing, if they find themselves in a lot of third and longs because the run game's struggling on first and second, can Carson Wentz drop back in a must-pass situation and complete and push the ball down the field and be accurate, be on time? If they can do those things, they can stay run dominant, but they can still be a balanced team in that situation. And the same thing vice versa for a pass-happy team. If they can run the ball when they need to run the ball, that's more valuable than saying we run the ball 30 times and we throw the ball 30 times, therefore we are balanced. That's not balanced in today's modern NFL.
I'm going to go on a sports talk radio question on you here, Greg. It just kind of hit me. It's kind of the same version of what we do on game day morning. Who do you trust more, right? So if you've got to win a game on the arm right now, and this is going to be a big Week 17 game. I know I'm a little bit all over the map here with you. Which quarterback would you take, Dak or Kyler, in a game where you need to throw to win? Which one of those guys would you take in that one?
I think I would take Dak, and that's not a knock on Kyler. I think a few weeks ago he was in the conversation of being the league MVP.
Right.
He had them really rolling. I think what Dak has to his advantage is I just think the pieces around him are still a lot better than maybe they're playing, and I think it's only a matter of time. You would hope that they find their groove. He's got 3 really good receivers. He's got 2 good backs. He's got an offensive line. I just think the supporting cast on top of, I think Dak's a really good player. I think he's a top-tier passer in this league. I just think when you have all those pieces around you and you've shown, the first 8 games of the year, they were rolling. They were the best offense in the league. They've stubbed their toe. They've had some guys in and out of the lineup. They had the COVID stuff. They had the injuries. If they can find their rhythm now, especially in the passing game, I think that offense just has such a higher ceiling. I think now with Hopkins potentially being out for a period of time at least, and maybe only coming back if they make a deep run, that's a huge hit for that offense, especially the passing game. So I think you'd have to place your bet on Dak and that Dallas offense.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.